Good evening. The study of the internal relationship between two music traditions of one single ethnic group, as are the sacred and folk music of the Greeks, presumes knowledge on each tradition's historical development. A particular emphasis should be given on a possible common ancestor, and assessments on specific encounters that this tradition may have through time are essential. This presentation aims to introduce the rich musical heritage of the ancient Greek music, and especially its impact on the formation processes of both the Byzantine ecclesiastical and the Greek folk music traditions. This common ancestor bequeathed to both traditions mainly the principles of its music theoretical structure. However, some methods of composition, poetic metric systems, and nomenclature were also transmitted orally or in written form through musical treatises. These integrated characteristics inside the Byzantine and folk music constitute a platform from where both traditions evolved and interact through the centuries. Ancient Greek music has survived only in fragmentary form. From those written sources, and principally from the surviving theoretical treatises on music, our knowledge is limited to the following. From the Homeric epics, we know that recitation of poetry related to historical events and personal achievements with instrumental accompaniment was the main entertainment in official feasts, athletic competitions, and symposia. The music is monophonic, with drones, and a kind of heterophony is also in usage. Folk songs like laments, seasonal, matrimonial, etc. are also mentioned. During the 7th and 6th centuries BC, besides the epic poetry, the so-called lyric poetry appears, the subject matter of which is related to the personal emotion of the artists. Alcaeus, Sappho, Pindaros are among the main representatives of this genre. Odes, Peanes, Epinikia, Parthenia are genres resulted from the lyric poetry set to music. During the 5th century BC, the Attic tragedy and comedy flourished, which had their roots in the pagan cult of Dionysus. This art encompasses poetry, music, and dance as a whole. The main type of this genre is the dithyrambos, where dance was accompanied by the aulos, a reed instrument, and recitation of text by the kithara, a string instrument. However, the most complete union of music, text, movement, and custom was developed in the drama, which formed the focal point of the public and religious festivals. Instrumental music was also developed, and there were even music competitions with monetary prizes. Melody remained monophonic, with its central purpose to underline the rhythm. Rhythm was the most important element in the music making, associated directly with the rhythm of the Greek language. Thrasybulus Georgiadis has supported the idea that the ancient Greek poetic rhythms of the Greek language, composed of long and short syllabic patterns, have passed from language to music. The meters of the language are quantitative, and consequently, the rhythm of the music that accompany the words corresponded with patterns of long and short notes. Once the Hellenistic Greek dialect introduced the prosodic signs for the correct pronunciation of the words by non-Greek speakers, the rhythm of the language changed, and the old one continued to live only in music, and specifically to the rhythmic meters that have been passed in genuine or varied form into the Greek folk music. In other words, the accentuation of the words changed completely the rhythm of the language from quantitative to inflective. Therefore, the Byzantines adopted a rhythmic poetical meter based on the number and dynamic accent of the syllables, and not on their duration in short and long. Melody ceased to play the role of emphasizing the rhythm, as was the case in antiquity. Due to the free, rhythmic, tonic nature of the hymn text, melody's main target was to follow the inflection of the words in order to guarantee the clear delivery of the sacred text. However, what has been transferred from language to music can be detected in the Byzantine music notation. The neumes of the Byzantine notation, which derived from the prosodic accent of the Hellenistic Greek language, apart from their diastematic purpose, have also retained that particular function of accent, which, in a musical context, acquires the role of ornamentation. For example, until 1820, the Byzantine notation had 6 different neumes in usage to notate the interval of an ascending second, and it's just the figure 1 in your handout. Like the prosodic signs used in language as a reading and phonetic aid, so that the words could be read correctly and convey their meaning in full, that same function was transferred to the neumes, granting them a twofold music function. directional, by pointing out the size of the interval, and prescriptive, on how to perform that interval. Regarding ancient Greek music theory, the tetrachord is the most fundamental unit from where all modes are derived. The outer notes of the tetrachord are fixed and called estotes, while the inner ones are movable and called metavoles. By the movement and specific position of the inner notes, the three genera, diatonic, chromatic, and enharmonic, were created. That's the figure 2 in your handout, which continues in the next page. These three groups of notes with a particular inner structure provide a distinctive quality of sound. According to Aristides Quintilianus, who lived around 300 AD, the diatonic genus is the first to be created since it is very natural and can be performed by anyone. The chromatic genus came later, since it is more technical to use and requires some music knowledge in order to be performed correctly. The enharmonic genus was the most technical of all. It required extended practice and was performed by few educated musicians. Furthermore, the Greek theorists arranged the tetrachords in pitch keys, also called toni, tropi, modes, or harmonia. There were 7 modes in existence during Ptolemy's years around the 2nd century AD. Each mode had its own harmony, and each harmony had its own ethos, with conscious associations to performance and audience. The modes were named after those ethnic groups related at some point with them. Labels such as Dorian, Lydian, Ionian, and Phrygian bear witness to this connection. In addition, the particular assortment of tetrachords formed 2 fundamental music systems, the greater perfect system and the lesser perfect system. The combination of these 2 is called the immutable ametabolon system. The Byzantine ecclesiastical music, defined as the music of the Greek Orthodox Church and born inside the historical context of the Byzantine Empire, became the carrier of some of the musical concepts of the antiquity. It retained the 3 genera, diatonic, chromatic, and enharmonic, modified to some extent in order to be included as part of the theoretical background of the new repertory. The melody, however, moves not in 1, but in 3 scale systems, the octachord, the pentachord, the tetrachord. Therefore, although the concept of octave species of the Greek ancient music has been transferred to the Byzantine tradition, 2 more systems have been added. The usage of this system is related to the ambitus of the melody and the 4 modal idioms, recitative, which is a declamatory style, suitable for the reading from the Gospel and the Acts of the Apostles, hymnologic, a note against syllable style, stihieraric, a moderate non-syllabic style allowing 2 or 3 notes per syllable, and papadikon, which is a highly melismatic style where the text is sometimes not clearly delivered. Each idiom is configured by the specific relations between music and text and by the tempo in which the chant is performed. The Byzantine octoekos, on the other hand, as is defined in the context of the Greek Orthodox Church music, is a musical classification scheme which consists of 8 modes arranged in 4 pairs. Every modal pair preserves an asymmetrical relationship between kyrios, principal, and plagios, plagal, which may bear witness of early stages of development. Also, there is a certain number of modal variants, which have been called as messy or paramessy, but they have been considered as deviations of one of the 8 modes in order for the octenary system to be preserved and altered through time. In theory, these modal variations keep always a relationship with one of the modes and never acquire the same stature. In practice, however, these modes are considered equally valid for composition. They are regarded as modal mixture and a conservative amplification of the music palette, a valuable tool for word painting in order to transfer the meaning of the text into music within the limits of tradition. Additionally, these 4 pairs of modes are arranged in families according to their diastematic constituency, which is determined by the genre. The 1st and 4th mode and their plagal pairs belong to the diatonic genus. The 2nd mode and his plagal pair belong to the chromatic genus, and while the 3rd and his plagal pair belong to the enharmonic genus. All modes, as in antiquity, have their own ethos, with intelligible connections to performers and listeners. As far as the diastematic constituency of the modes is concerned, Byzantine music uses an untempered tuning system consisting of a rich variety of intervals, including microtones, diatones, and tritones. Actually, it is its pure vocal character and specific melodic structures that permit all kinds of intervals. In short, Byzantine music, in its effort to preserve the monophonic, vocal, sacred, and austere character, modified, amplified, or rejected the inherited material or influences from other contemporary music practices. But what was the reaction of the church during the developing years of the repertory? The early church permitted the setting of the sacred text to music in order to catch the attention of more people and compete with the heresies which threatened its survival. At this point, the introduction of folk music tunes cannot be excluded, since familiar to the people tunes could create a pole of attraction by itself to the new faith. P.H. Lang, in his book Music in Western Civilization, has proposed that although the first Christians imitated the chanting of the synagogue, once they came in contact with the Greek civilization, the Hebrew melodies were displayed by the local music tradition. However, when these tunes incorporated in the ritual, they were modified accordingly to serve a totally different purpose, the spiritual communication with God under a wholly new conception. This tactic of adding music to the church services led to the slow but steady flourishing of the music in a parallel growth with that of the services inside the church, completed by the 11th century. A wealthy repertory of art music was created throughout the centuries by the vital participation of the hymnographer-composer figure, such as Romanos the Melodist, John of Damascus, Cassiani the Nun, the Studite monks, and the figure of the composer-cantor, like the Meister singers of the Colophonic period and the post-Byzantine musicians. This repertory was performed not only in cathedrals and in official feasts as privilege of a few. It was also heard in small churches and parishes around the empire, forming a vital part of the people's everyday life. This music corpus, which counts already with 16 centuries of uninterrupted presence, undoubtedly became one of the most important suppliers of music material to other concurrent traditions, as are the secular and folk music of the Greeks. Although church music, due to its conservative nature, prohibited the intrusion of folk tunes that were not aligned with the Orthodox ethos, there were textless melismatic parts. There were instances throughout his history that permitted such an action. A case at point could be the textless melismatic parts or music sections with nonsense syllables recorded in Byzantine chant manuscript during the Colophonic period, around 14th, 15th centuries. These vocalization sections, which occupied dozens of manuscript folios, were called kratimata or teretismata, and bear such typical names as trumpet, bell, viola, Persian, like a peach, large nightingale, etc., labels that make evident their secular origin. Once introduced in the church music, these sections were apparently used as music filler during some liturgical action. The church fathers, on the other hand, in order to justify the existence of pure music sections without the presence of an intelligible sacred text, accepted them as the Christian practice of glossolalia and/or the human imitation of the angelic chant. One more peculiarity regarding the Greek church music is that the written tradition of Byzantine chant always assumed and required the support of an oral tradition. The melodies were transmitted orally even after the emergence of the written score. The notation of the early stages was nothing more but a mnemonic device. From the phonetic notation appearing in manuscript around the 8th century, which recorded the melodic formulas in a pure stenographic form, until the so-called exegetical notation of the 17th century, where every group of neumes was analyzed and written down in detail, the oral communication of melodic material continued its indispensable function as a vital ingredient for the transmission of music. Under these circumstances, any effort to detect folk tunes incorporating the church repertory would be fruitless, since familiar tunes would never make it in writing because they were retained and secured in memory. The Greek folk music, on the other hand, was never written down systematically until the 19th century. The preservation, transmission, and development of music have always been made orally. Undoubtedly, folk music is a living tradition that encloses many very old practices, and our best guess regarding its origin is hypothetical and uncertain. However, the ethnomusicologist Samuel Bot-Bovie has declared with certainty that among the relics of ancient Greek music, two of them, the Invocation to the Muse and the Epitaph of Sikylos, are unmistakable, genuine folk songs. That's figure 3 in your handout. The verse from the Invocation, and I quote now Bovie. The verse from the Invocation to the Muse is a typical folk verse, which may be considered as the missing link between the Aristophanean catalectic iambic tetrameter and the Byzantine and modern Greek political verse. A Cretan song recorded in 1954 produces the same verse, the same rhythm, and the same median cadences. The verses of the song engraved on the gravestone of Sikilos do not belong to the classical metrics. They are rather similar to nursery rhymes. And dance song of Peloponnesus retain the same rhythm, and we find the same shape and the same last gliding to the low fourth in Romanian folk songs of Maramus, end of quote. Both Bovie's account gives an excellent proof of the power of oral tradition to transmit musical material through an extended period of time. The rhythm of the folk song inscribed on the tombstone of Sikilos around the 1st century AD is the same as the chamiko dance, a widely known genre in continental Greece. His report also provides us with an unexpected original transcription of ancient Greek folk music. Mesomidis is the Cretan lyric poet and composer of the 2nd century AD who composed the folk song, Invocation to the Muse, and is in the same geographical area, the island of Crete, where a modern folk song has a surprising resemblance to the Axion one. Nevertheless, the first systematic modern transcription of Greek folk music were made by foreign ethnomusicologists starting as early as the 17th century. In the 18th century, the efforts increased by the participation of Greek specialists in the field. The first recordings, though, were made on cylinders by the French scholar Hubert Pernot on the island of Chios in 1898. Yet, the oldest transcription of Greek folk songs as known today has been discovered by Dr. Stathis, written in the Codex K1189 of Iviron Monastery, dating in 1562 and located at Mount Athos, northern Greece. As had been mentioned earlier, the Greek folk music inherited almost all rhythmic variations of the Asian poetry. Rhythms, as are the iambic, dactylic, anapestic, spondaic, epitritus, can be found in all kinds of folk songs and dances. Other music elements from the antiquity were transmitted indirectly to folk music through the Byzantine tradition. Under the influence of the Byzantine chant, particularly through the sharing of melodic materials, the folk music assumed subconsciously the theoretical model scheme of octoekos, including the three genera and their intervallic diversity. Unlike the Byzantine ecclesiastic music, which uses a free poetic form in medieval Greek, folk songs in general utilize isosyllabic, strictly poetic verses with rhymes and reprises in modern Greek, maintaining simultaneously the temperament of the local dialects. Melody is based on rhythmic patterns and not in word intonation. Instrumental music suitable for dance, a cappella, and polyphonic pieces are also performed in specific areas. In the absence of a written score, only collective memory preserves the artistic creations. The educational feature of folk music is also important, since it accompanies local customs, the ethical association of which pass from one generation to the next. Unlike sacred music, folk music accompanies the activities of everyday life and expresses all kinds of human emotions. The variety of genres echoes the historical itinerary of a nation in its diverse geographical regions, as are the mountains and the islands. The plurality of styles reflects influences imposed from outside agriculture during colonization, Italian and Western music, or occupation periods, Ottomans with Oriental music. However, the uninterrupted presence of the rich Byzantine chant tradition constitutes a major influence and source of inspiration for the anonymous artists of the folk music. In order to follow this course of action, we need to take into account that in the Greek countryside, religion is a family affair. Many customs that include music are placed around religious feasts and commemorations. As far as the human element is concerned, the priest is an active participant in the community. He is allowed to get married and have a common life like everybody else. He drinks his coffee in the local cafe, he works in his fields, and participates in all kinds of public events. The religious feasts are always end up in a village banquet, where the priest can even dance the opening song, while the church cantors are the principal singers. This mixture of performance and participants involved simultaneously in both music traditions can be demonstrated in the following accounts. In the island of Skiathos, it has been reported that during the Feast of the Resurrection, the church cantors at some point turned religious hymns to parody by using the method of contrafacta in an improvisatory fashion. This is an example of a church cantor being a composer of a folk song. In addition, ordinary people know the repertoire of church music because they have participated in the church choir for some time in their lifetime. Jorgen Rasted reported to us that while he was having lunch in a Greek restaurant in Brussels, the owner, after hearing that he is working on Byzantine music, he sang for him the famous Christmas Contakio by Romanos, the melodies, I Parthenon Simero. This incident can help us reflect on the possible popularity of the Byzantine ecclesiastic music, especially during the Middle Ages, and how ordinary people, the anonymous composers of the folk songs, have unconsciously absorbed it. Another example that illustrates the role of the performer as the common denominator for both traditions is the following. That's figure 4 in your handout. Dimitrios Endouris, nicknamed Mimaros, 1865 to 1902, is the great artist of the Greek shadow theater called Karagiozis, the Black Eye Man. Mimaros was also a cantor at the Church of St. Andrew in Patras, Greece. As a puppet master, his vocal skill was required because, in order to introduce the characters as they get on the stage, he had to sing associated to the character tunes, such as a Byzantine melody for Alexander the Great, a Cleftic air for Uncle George, an Oriental makam for the non-Christian citizens of the Byzantine Empire, and an Italian tune for the man from Zakynthos, a Western Greek island influenced by the Italian music tradition. Mimaros, as a well-trained cantor in Byzantine tradition, he could effortlessly perform all aforementioned tunes. However, the best example that makes audible the close relationship between Byzantine ecclesiastic and folk music are the so-called religious songs, like carols, the melodies of which are based entirely on ecclesiastical hymn tunes. One possible explanation of this music phenomenon is given by Dr. Kostas Ioannidis, whose account regarding the island of Cyprus can also apply to the Greek mainland, and I open quote here. During the long years of the Turkish occupation of Cyprus, 1570 to 1878, the Greek Cypriots gradually sank into ignorance and illiteracy. The Turkish government did not provide facilities for Greek education, and secret night schools were established in churches. Vespers, matins, and morning masses provided opportunities for language and music education. From the 17th century up to the beginning of the 20th century, the former reciprocal influence of folk songs and hymn tunes ceased, and folk music came directly under the influence of Byzantine ecclesiastic music. Let's now proceed with the performance of chant and folk music for the better illustration of what we have said. The chant we're about to listen was written for the Feast of Annunciation as prelude to the so-called Akathistos hymn. In the year 626 AD, this chant as prelude to the hymn was substituted by the Kontakio ti Hypermacho, a chant composed as thanksgiving to Virgin Mary for protecting the city of Constantinople for the Avars. Today, the chant we're about to listen is an apolitikio performed in Mass during Lent. It is written in the fourth plagal mode and belongs to the diatonic genus. Thank you. On the Feast of St. Lazarus, Saturday morning before Palm Sunday, in the town of Komotini, northeastern Greece, young women dressed with the traditional costumes assemble a wooden cross which is covered with white clothes to resemble a man. At the top, they sketch a face, eyes, and mouth. Then they are carrying it around the streets of the town and visiting houses, singing the carols of Lazarus, offering eggs, and wishing Happy Easter. The Lazarus figure is considered to bring good luck to the houses that hosted him. The costume is old and brought to Komotini from eastern Thracia.
Ήρθε Κυριακή του χρόνου τα οι φωλίτσες μας δεν τα χωρούνε, δώστε μας για να σας ευχηθούμε.
Thank you. The second chant will be in Ex Apostilario Idiomelon, performed in the second Sunday of Easter in Matins. It is written in the second mode and belongs to the chromatic genus. Thank you. The next song is a folk song from the island of Paros. It is sung by the priests in responsorial style during the carnival season. Thank you. The next chant is performed during the feast of the presentation of the Lord at the temple, celebrated on February 2nd. The chant melody is transferred to a wedding song. What is distinctive about this example, though, is the resemblance of the verses between the chant and the song. In the Byzantine chant, the poet begs God to protect and shelter the believers, while in the folk song, the poet begs Mary the Virgin to protect and shelter the newly married couple. This chant is written in the third mode and belongs to the enharmonic genus. The wedding song now.
Σήκω κάμε τη μετάνια και θα φύγεις από εδώ, σηκωνήθηκε στολή σου και σου φέρνουν το γαμπρό. Σηκωνήθηκε προσκύνα και πάμε στην εκκλησιά, απ' τον ουρανό θα λάβεις του Θεού την ευλογιά. Απ' τον ουρανό θα λάβεις του Θεού την ευλογιά, σκυψενήθηκε προσκύνα και πάμε στην εκκλησιά. Παναγιά μου, σε δέχθης στις αγκάλες το Χριστό, δέξου φύλαγε και σκέπε το ανδρόγυνο αυτό. Δέξου φύλαγε και σκέπε το ανδρόγυνο αυτό. Παναγιά μου, σε δέχθης στις αγκάλες το Χριστό.
Thank you very much.